They sold the fat woman as useless virgin, but what the billionaire did stunned everyone. On a rainy night, they sold a plus-size woman like she was nothing, useless, untouched, a price tag on her body. Then a cold, dangerous billionaire stood up, paid everything, and did the one thing no one expected. He didn't buy a night, he declared war. He wrapped her in his jacket, not his hands, and from that moment the skyline shook. Boardrooms turned into battlefields, hidden cameras, dirty charities, a secret auction list that points straight at the people smiling on TV. And when the trap snaps shut, he makes the move that silences the room. He gives up his crown to make her untouchable. But the monsters he exposed don't forgive. A kill order drops. The final sale is a setup, and the stage is loaded. Why did he bet his whole empire on one woman the world called useless? What truth at that auction could burn a city? And when the knives come out, will his sacrifice save her, or start a war no one can control? Through the tinted windows, city lights blurred into streaks of neon and shadow. Kenna pressed herself against the door, the cool leather seat beneath her doing nothing to calm her racing heart. Benedict's jacket, draped over her shoulders, was heavy with his lingering warmth and carried a subtle scent of sandalwood. He sat on the opposite side, maintaining a careful distance. His presence filled the space, not with threat, but with a controlled intensity that made the air feel charged. Under the passing streetlights, she caught glimpses of his sharp profile. Dark hair swept back from a stern forehead, jaw set like granite. "You're safe now," he said, his voice low and steady. "No one will harm you." Kenna's fingers clutched the edges of his jacket. "Why?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "Because I said so." Simple. Final. His eyes met hers for a moment, steel gray and absolutely certain. The SUV glided through the wet streets, 2 more identical vehicles flanking them front and back. Through the windshield, Kenna watched unfamiliar neighborhoods pass by. Expensive townhouses gave way to medical complexes. "The clinic?" she asked, hating how her voice shook. "Standard procedure. You'll be checked for injuries, given whatever care you need." He paused, then added quietly, "Your consent will be required for everything. You can refuse any examination or treatment." The simple statement of control over her own body made her throat tight. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Rain drummed steadily on the roof as they turned into a private parking structure. The convoy of SUVs moved in practice formation, boxing them in protectively. Benedict's phone buzzed once, and he glanced at it before returning his attention to her. "Dr. Chen is waiting. She's excellent and discreet. Female nurses only, if you prefer." Kenna drew a steadying breath. "Thank you." The words felt insufficient for what he'd done, but they were all she had. He inclined his head slightly, acknowledgement without demand. The vehicle stopped, and his security team moved with silent efficiency, checking the area before opening their doors. Rain misted in through the opening. Benedict made no move to touch her or hurry her along. "Take your time. We're secure here." Kenna gathered herself, pushing back memories of the warehouse's harsh lights and grasping stairs. The clinic's entrance glowed softly ahead, promising warmth and privacy. She stepped out, his jacket still wrapped around her like armor. The security detail formed a loose circle, professional and impersonal. Benedict walked beside her, matching her pace. His presence was like a wall between her and the world's sharp edges. Inside, the clinic was all soft beige walls and gentle lighting. A middle-aged Asian woman in a white coat approached, her manner calm and direct. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Dr. Chen. Would you like to follow me?" Kenna glanced at Benedict. He had positioned himself by the waiting area, clearly intending to stay back unless invited closer. "Your boundaries are yours to set," he said quietly. "I'll be here if you need anything." The simple respect in those words steadied her more than any grand gesture could have. Kenna squared her shoulders and followed Dr. Chen down the hallway, still wearing his jacket like a shield. The examination room was warm and private, with no harsh fluorescent glare. Dr. Chen's movements were practiced and professional as she gathered supplies. "Everything at your comfort level," she assured Kenna. "We can start with basic vitals, and you tell me what you're comfortable with after that." Kenna sat on the padded table, the paper crinkling beneath her. The navy dress, that had felt like a costume of vulnerability, now just seemed like clothes. No more power to define her than she allowed it. "I wasn't," she began, then steadied her voice. "They didn't get to do anything to me. I was just scared." Dr. Chen nodded, neither dismissing nor dramatizing that fear. "Fear itself can take a toll. Let's make sure you're okay, whatever you're comfortable sharing." As the doctor checked her blood pressure and pulse, Kenna felt the first layers of tension begin to ease. The rain continued outside, but it no longer seemed threatening, just a natural sound marking time as she reclaimed her sense of safety, piece by piece. In the waiting room, Benedict remained where she'd left him, a patient sentinel. His security team had positioned themselves strategically around the clinic's perimeter, a quiet barrier between her and the darkness she'd been pulled from. The night's horrors felt increasingly distant with each gentle professional interaction. Dr. Chen's calm competence, the clinic's peaceful atmosphere, and the simple power of having her choices respected. It all worked to transform her rescue from a moment of terror into the first step toward healing. Kenna touched the sleeve of Benedict's jacket, the fine wool smooth under her fingertips. He'd given it to her without hesitation, not as a claim, but as shelter. Like everything else since he'd spoken those impossible words at the auction, it was offered freely, with no demands attached. The woman in the navy dress who'd stood trembling on that warehouse stage felt like a stranger now, or perhaps just a version of herself she was already leaving behind, step by careful step, in this quiet clinic with its soft lights and respect for boundaries. Dr. Chen's gentle voice brought her back to the present. "Would you like some water? We can take this as slowly as you need." Kenna nodded, grateful for the ordinary kindness. Outside the examination room, she could hear the steady rhythm of the rain, the soft sounds of the clinic's evening routine, and knew that beyond all that was Benedict, waiting with the patience of absolute certainty that she would be protected, however long it took for her to feel safe again. Dr. Chen worked methodically, her gloved hands gentle as she documented the rope burns on Kenna's wrists. The camera clicked softly, each flash carefully warned before it came. Benedict stood by the consultation room's far wall, his presence steady but unobtrusive. "These won't scar," Dr. Chen assured, applying a cooling gel. "But we should document everything for your records." "No records," Benedict spoke for the first time since they'd entered. "Photos only, stored offline. No names." The doctor nodded without argument, though Kenna noticed the flicker of recognition when she glanced at him. More tests followed. Blood pressure, tox screen, basic metabolic panel. Through it all, Benedict remained a silent guardian, speaking only to authorize whatever Dr. Chen recommended. "I'll need a moment with my patient," Dr. Chen said finally. Benedict stepped out without hesitation. The doctor's questions were direct but kind. Had anyone touched her? Had she been drugged or injured? Each "no" seemed to lighten the air slightly. When Benedict returned, he carried a leather portfolio. The consultation room felt smaller with him in it, though he took care to keep his distance as he placed the portfolio on the table between them. "A protection contract," he explained, voice low and steady. "Living arrangements, financial support, therapy if you want it. The only binding rule is that your consent matters in everything." Kenna opened the portfolio. The paper was thick, expensive. The terms were clear: a furnished apartment in his building, a monthly stipend, medical care, security. No expectations of intimacy, no demands except one. She had to stay in his building. "A gilded cage is still a cage," she said, looking up at him. "The ring will retaliate." His jaw tightened. "Not against me, against you. They can't reach inside my building." A siren wailed outside, and Kenna noticed how Benedict's hand moved fractionally toward what had to be a concealed weapon. There was a scar near his hairline, pale and old. When she shivered, he looked away, something like shame crossing his features. "Why do you care?" she asked. Before he could answer, commotion erupted in the hallway. An emergency team rushed past with a gurney. Through the consultation room's window, paparazzi camera flashes strobed like lightning. "Mr. Hale!" A nurse appeared in the doorway, urgent but professional. "The witness from the Madison operation." "Handle it," Benedict ordered, and the nurse vanished. "Hale." The name hit Kenna like a physical force. Benedict Hale, the business magazines, the society pages, the finance news. Not just wealthy, but famous, which meant she couldn't simply disappear now. Too many people had seen her. He seemed to read her thoughts. "The media attention makes you safer in some ways, more vulnerable in others. Inside my building, you're protected from both." From his pocket, he withdrew a simple phone. One number programmed. One word. Lighthouse. Say it, and everything stops. No questions, no consequences. I'll have you moved anywhere in the world within hours. Kenna took the phone. It was light. Basic. A lifeline disguised as plastic and circuits. Why that word? "Lighthouses guide ships away from danger," he said simply. They don't judge why you need safe harbor. More camera flashes sparked outside. Benedict's security team moved with increased urgency, coordinating through discreet earpieces. The witnesses' arrival had drawn attention they couldn't afford. "We need to move," Benedict said, but his tone held no pressure. "Your choice, but we need to decide now." Kenna looked down at the contract, the phone, the fading marks on her wrists. Through the window, she could see reporters gathering. The night that had started with an auction stage now offered two paths: Benedict's fortress or the streets where the ring would hunt her. The car waited in the clinic's private bay, engine purring softly. Benedict's driver held the door without expression, security teams already in position. Dawn was still hours away, the rain continuing its steady pattern. Kenna gripped the phone, feeling its edges press into her palm. The contract lay unsigned in the portfolio. But when Benedict stepped back to give her space to decide, she moved toward the car. Safety for a few hours was still safety. She could always say the word later. The garage under Hale Tower was pristine concrete and subtle lighting, nothing like the warehouse's raw industrial spaces. As the car pulled into a reserved space, Kenna felt the weight of steel and security systems above them. Protection or prison, depending on her next choice. Benedict waited, patient and still, as she gathered herself. The phone was warm in her hand now, a constant reminder that she had an exit route. The elevator needed his fingerprint and retinal scan. Ultimate security or ultimate control. The line between them was as thin as the scar on his temple. The garage lights cast their shadows, long against the polished floor. Somewhere above, a penthouse waited. Somewhere outside, the ring plotted retaliation. Dawn would come either way. Kenna took a breath and stepped out of the car, choosing the devil she could see over the one still hidden in the night. The morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows as Benedict's security chief, a woman with close-cropped silver hair, showed Kenna to her suite. The space was larger than her old apartment, done in creams and soft grays that somehow didn't feel sterile. "Your code." The chief, Marcus, just Marcus, handed her a card with a 6-digit number. "Changes weekly. Only you and medical have it. Not even Mr. Hale." Kenna tested the keypad, hearing the solid click of the lock. Her fingers traced the cool metal, remembering other locks that hadn't protected her. "The fridge is stocked," Marcus continued, professional but not unkind. "Closet too. Tags still on everything. We guessed sizes, but there's a tablet for ordering replacements." On the kitchen counter, a handwritten note sat beside a crystal vase holding a single white lily. Benedict's handwriting was precise, almost architectural. "Eat first, sleep, then we talk." After Marcus left, Kenna explored. The shower had settings she'd never seen before, steam filling the marble space until she could barely see her own hands. The hot water washed away the auction house's stale air, but not the memory of spotlights and grasping eyes. Clean and wrapped in a robe soft enough to make her skin sing, she investigated the kitchen. The fridge held prepared meals, fresh fruit, imported cheeses, enough for a week of feasting. She made herself eat slowly, savoring real food after days of fear. The suite sprawled beyond the main living space. A private gym held top-line equipment, the mirrors discreetly angled to prevent blind spots. The bedroom's silk drapes concealed steel shutters that could seal at a button's touch. Every luxury backed by security, beauty masking strength. Around noon, a staff member wheeled in a cart of fresh towels, nearly colliding with another bringing lunch. Kenna helped them sort out the confusion, earning surprised looks when she remembered their names and thanked them properly. "The blue cart goes to 1902, she explained gently to the younger worker. "See the tag? You're new too, aren't you?" The staff's wariness softened. By late afternoon, they'd stopped treating her like she might shatter or snap. Small victories, but hers. The sun was setting when Benedict returned, looking oddly domestic with grocery bags in his arms. His suit jacket was gone, shirt sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms marked with faint scars. "I thought," he paused, seeming to search for words. "You might want real food, not just catering." "You cook?" Kenna asked, noting how he arranged ingredients with precise care. "How hard can it be?" He studied a salmon fillet like it might contain classified information. "There are instructions." What followed was a masterclass in how not to cook fish. The smoke alarm chirped twice. Benedict, who probably orchestrated multi-million-dollar deals daily, managed to both under- and overcook the same piece of salmon. The expensive fish stuck to the pan in tragic chunks. "I don't understand," he muttered, prodding the wreckage. "I followed the temperature guidelines exactly." Kenna couldn't help it. She laughed. The sound surprised them both. You didn't pat it dry first. Here, let me. She salvaged what she could, showing him how to test for doneness. They ate at the kitchen counter, the ruined first attempt disposed of with dignity, the tension that had haunted the air since the clinic began to ease. I want more than safety, Kenna said finally, pushing her plate away. The ring! They're still operating, still hurting people. Benedict's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. You want to help end them? I want them stopped, not just hidden from. He nodded slowly. It's already in motion, but it has to be careful, strategic. One wrong move. A soft scraping sound interrupted him. They both turned toward the door, where a red envelope had appeared in the gap beneath. Benedict moved fast, silent as a shadow, but Kenna reached the envelope first. Inside was a photo, her on the auction platform, the navy dress stark against harsh lights. Words were scrawled across the bottom in red ink. You were cheap at any price. Below that, an address and time. Midnight. A trap, Benedict said, voice winter cold. Obviously. Kenna's hands didn't shake as she studied the photo. But they want me there, which means they need me for something. No. The word was flat, final. You can't leave me behind, she countered. The threat names me. What if there are others? Other girls they've taken? Benedict was already moving, phone in hand, as he issued rapid commands. When he returned, he wore a tactical jacket, weapons visible now rather than concealed. 15 minutes, he said. Armor first. Marcus has your gear. The building's night security protocols were engaging, subtle lights shifting to alert status. As they headed for the garage, Kenna caught her reflection in a darkened window. No longer the trapped auction lot, but something new. Something dangerous to those who'd thought her powerless. The elevator descended past midnight, carrying them down to where vehicles waited, engines already warming. Benedict checked his weapons with mechanical precision, while Kenna adjusted the lightweight armor vest Marcus had fitted her with. Neither spoke, but the silence held understanding now, not fear. The garage doors opened onto rain-slick streets, the city's lights blurred by weather and darkness. Somewhere out there, the ring waited, thinking they'd lured prey into a trap. They didn't know they'd invited predators instead. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, its metal walls gleaming dully in the rain. Kenna pressed against the cold concrete column, her borrowed Kevlar-lined coat heavy but reassuring. The earpiece crackled softly as Benedict's team moved into position. Remember, Benedict's voice came through clear and low. Stay behind cover. If anyone approaches... Lighthouse, Kenna whispered back, using their safe word. I know. She counted breaths as Benedict led his team through the side entrance. 4 men, moving like shadows, their footsteps barely audible on the wet pavement. Through the earpiece, she heard the first collision, a grunt, the crack of bone, a body hitting concrete. Benedict moved with terrifying efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation. 2 guards went down before they could raise an alarm. The third managed to draw his weapon, but Benedict was faster. The snap of the man's wrist echoed through the space, followed by the clatter of the gun skidding across the floor. Kenna watched Benedict's hands afterward, when the immediate threat was contained. They trembled slightly as he secured zip ties, his knuckles white with tension. Violence came naturally to him, but it extracted a price, one he paid willingly but not easily. Clear, Marcus called from deeper inside. Boss, you need to see this. Benedict gestured for Kenna to join them, his team forming a protective circle as they moved to a back office. The room was small but organized, with filing cabinets lining one wall and a sophisticated computer setup occupying most of the desk space. Blackmail insurance, Marcus explained, indicating several external drives. Dossiers on their high-end clientele, names, dates, video footage. Copy everything, Benedict ordered, his voice clipped. He was already working on a locked drawer, his picks moving with practiced precision. The drawer yielded with a soft click. Inside, older files spoke of deeper corruption. Benedict's hands stilled as he lifted out a particular folder, its edges worn with age. Kenna moved closer, reading over his shoulder in the dim light. The documents detailed a debt, one forced on Benedict's mother years ago by Salvatore Russo, the trafficking ring's architect. Photos showed a younger woman with Benedict's sharp features, her expression haunted. Dates and amounts spelled out how Salvatore had manufactured the obligation, using it to build his empire of exploitation. This is why, Kenna said softly. Why you were ready for tonight. Why you knew about the auction. Benedict's jaw tightened. I've spent 20 years building walls against him. making myself untouchable. But I was too slow. He's already expanded, already has new leverage points. A red light blinked on the wall, drawing Kenna's attention to a camera she hadn't noticed before. Its lens focused directly on her face, recording everything. "How long has that been running?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus checked the feed. "Broadcasting to an off-site server. If these files leak..." "I become a permanent target," Kenna finished. "Everyone will know I was here." Benedict's expression hardened. He spoke rapidly into his comm, coordinating with the tech team to trace the broadcast. But Kenna could read the truth in his tension. The damage was already done. Her face was out there, linked forever to whatever fallout came from tonight's raid. They worked methodically through dawn, copying drives and photographing documents. Benedict's team swept for additional cameras and bugs, finding 3 more hidden devices. Everything was cataloged, bagged, and loaded into unmarked vehicles. The sky was turning gray when they finally returned to the penthouse. Kenna's exhaustion felt bone deep, but her mind raced with implications. The elevator ride was silent, Benedict standing close enough that she could feel the heat of him, sense the coiled energy he still carried. In the penthouse's kitchen, she shed the protective coat while Benedict secured the evidence in a reinforced safe. When he turned back, his expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes gave him away. Concern, anger, and something deeper that made her breath catch. "So, it's not a cage?" Kenna said finally, naming the truth they'd discovered. "I'm a target." Benedict moved closer, his hands steady now, as he traced the air near her cheek, not quite touching. "You're mine to protect." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and warning. Kenna looked up at him, seeing past the controlled exterior to the man who'd acted instantly when he recognized his mother's tormentor, who shook after violence but never hesitated to use it in defense of others, who'd built an empire as armor but still cooked terrible salmon to make her smile. Dawn painted the kitchen windows in pale gold, but neither of them moved toward rest yet. The drives from the warehouse held secrets that could shatter lives, and somewhere Salvatore was learning that his carefully constructed web had torn. The game was changing, the stakes rising, and Kenna was now irrevocably part of it. Benedict's security teams rotated shifts in the corridor outside, their movements precise and practiced. Inside, the penthouse's automated systems hummed to life, responding to the new day. But in the kitchen, time seemed suspended as Kenna and Benedict stood in the growing light, their shadows stretching across the floor, merged at the edges where distance had dissolved. The private gym's mirrors caught morning light, reflecting Benedict's controlled movements as he demonstrated defensive stances. Kenna watched, noting how he maintained careful distance, his hands indicating where he would grip without actually touching her. "Your center of gravity is different from mine," he explained, voice steady. "Use that. An attacker expects you to move back. Step into their space instead, then—" "You can touch me," Kenna interrupted. "I won't break." Benedict's reflection showed the slight tightening of his jaw. "The holds require—" "Stop apologizing. For my body." Kenna turned to face him directly. "I'm not fragile. I'm furious. And I need to learn this properly." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe even admiration. He nodded once, then positioned himself behind her. His hands were warm against her hips, grip firm but not constraining. "3 move," he said. "Strike, break the hold, retreat to cover. Again." They fell into a rhythm. Strike, break, retreat. Between sets, Kenna caught her breath, watching Benedict adjust the padding on a practice dummy. The scar near his hairline caught the light. "How did you get that?" she asked, pointing. Benedict's movements stilled. "I was 17, found out where they were keeping my mother, a debt collector's car, outside a casino." His voice went distant. "She'd been missing 3 days. I wasn't thinking clearly. Glass broke." "But you got her out." "Yes." His hands flexed. She never gambled again, but the damage was done. Salvatore had his hooks in deep. A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered with a tablet, his expression grim. "Sir, the footage is spreading. Someone leaked clips from the auction. Social media's picking it up." Kenna took the tablet, scrolling through comments, her face in grainy video, that navy dress, strangers dissecting her worth. Her fingers tightened on the screen. "They don't get to define this," she said. "I won't let them." Benedict studied her. "What do you want to do?" "Tell the truth, all of it. The charity scam I exposed, the fake modeling job, the auction, make it impossible to ignore the pattern. They spent the next hours drafting a statement, Benedict's security team, vetting networks while Kenna refined her words. By early evening, they had arranged a live interview. "This is a mistake," Jonah Pike's voice cut through their preparation. Benedict's COO stood in the doorway, immaculate suit at odds with his worried expression. "The stock's already down 8 points on rumors alone. We need to de-escalate the distraction." Kenna's skin crawled at his phrasing. Distraction. As if human trafficking was an inconvenient PR problem. "The stock will recover," Benedict said coldly. "The board can contact my office directly." Benedict's tone left no room for argument. "Close the door on your way out." Jonah's departure felt like poison leaving the room. Kenna rolled her shoulders, trying to shake off his dismissive attitude. Night settled over the city as they finished preparations. The interview would air tomorrow morning. Kenna needed air, space to think. She stepped onto the penthouse terrace, letting the wind catch her hair. The city spread below, a maze of lights and shadows. Somewhere in that sprawl, other women faced similar choices: silence or speech, shame or defiance. Kenna gripped the railing, feeling the cool metal ground her. "I'm not a stain," she practiced, voice steady. "I'm a survivor. I choose who I am." From the doorway, Benedict watched. Pride and fear warred in his eyes, pride for her strength, fear for what exposure might bring. But he didn't try to stop her. He understood that some battles required stepping into the light. The wind carried her words away, but their truth remained. Tomorrow would bring cameras and questions, judgment and speculation. But tonight, in this moment, Kenna stood tall. The woman who'd refused to cry at auction now refused to hide. Benedict stayed in the doorway, a silent guardian giving her space to find her voice. His presence felt like anchor points in her new reality. The careful teacher in the gym, the wounded son in the casino parking lot, the protector who'd rather cook bad salmon than treat her like property. The city lights blurred as clouds gathered. A storm was coming, but Kenna wouldn't seek shelter. She'd learned today that sometimes safety meant standing your ground, that fury could be focused into purpose. Her body remembered the morning's lessons: strike, break, retreat. But retreat was a tactical choice, not in surrender. The terrace's motion sensors activated, bathing the space in soft light. It caught the determined set of Kenna's shoulders, the subtle changes from this morning's training. She was still learning her strength, but already she stood differently. Not as a victim seeking refuge, but as a woman choosing her battlefield. Practice complete, she turned from the railing. Benedict straightened, holding the door. Inside, files from the warehouse waited to be analyzed. Tomorrow's interview loomed, but tonight had given her new weapons: knowledge of her own body's power, understanding of Benedict's carefully maintained control, and most importantly, the certainty that she would face whatever came on her own terms. They had hours yet before sleep would claim them. Hours to review security footage, strengthen defensive plans, prepare for tomorrow's revelation. But these quiet moments on the terrace had solidified something essential. Kenna wasn't just accepting protection, she was choosing to fight back. The studio lights felt harsh after days in Benedict's shadowed penthouse. Kenna sat straight-backed in the interview chair, her navy blazer crisp against the pale blue set walls. The host, Diana Chen, maintained professional warmth as they began the live stream. "Ms. Brooks, thank you for joining us today. You've chosen to speak about a disturbing experience." "Yes," Kenna's voice stayed level. "I was targeted after exposing financial misconduct at my previous workplace. What followed was calculated, a fake modeling opportunity that led to human trafficking." She didn't detail the warehouse's damp air or the jeering crowd. Instead, she focused on the pattern. They prey on women who speak up, who challenge corruption. The label useless isn't about worth. It's a weapon used to strip humanity from targets who threaten their operations. Diana leaned forward. "You're describing systematic exploitation." "Exactly. These aren't isolated incidents. A producer interrupted, holding up a tablet. "We have a statement from Hope Harbor Rehabilitation Center. They're offering full program placement and support services." Kenna's spine stiffened. That name. The same front organization whose books had revealed missing funds, whose director had threatened her career when she flagged discrepancies. "I'm familiar with Hope Harbor," she said carefully. "Their model relies on unpaid labor disguised as therapy. Residents process donations that feed private accounts. It's exploitation marketed as charity." In the wings, Benedict watched her steady dismantling of the organization's facade. His phone buzzed. Encrypted intel from his team. Hope Harbor's annual gala was scheduled in 48 hours at the Metropolitan Museum. Financial traces showed Salvatore Russo's money woven through their accounts like poison ivy. Diana pressed for details. You're suggesting Hope Harbor enables trafficking? I'm stating that their business model profits from vulnerability while claiming to offer healing. The numbers don't lie. I've seen their books. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Kenna never raised her voice or showed anger, just relentless clarity about systemic abuse. When they cut to commercial, she finally allowed her shoulders to drop. Benedict met her backstage, his security forming a barrier against hovering staff. You were remarkable. I felt sick the whole time. She smoothed her blazer, but silence serves them more than fear serves me. The drive back to the penthouse was tense with unspoken plans. In the private elevator, Benedict finally voiced what they both considered. The gala provides access to their internal networks. We need to go. Kenna's reflection in the mirrored walls looked determined. Not as targets, as witnesses they can't dismiss. The penthouse hummed with activity when they arrived. Security feeds showed increased chatter around Hope Harbor's accounts. Marcus had blueprints of the museum displayed on tablets, while Jonah Pike argued risk assessments. It's too exposed, Jonah insisted. The stock barely stabilized after today's interview. The stock isn't the priority. Benedict's tone could have frozen flame. Kenna, what parameters would make you comfortable attending? She considered while studying the layout. I want a real role, not window dressing. Let me work the donor angle. I know their pitches, their weak spots. They spent hours mapping approach strategies. Benedict's team would clone servers while Kenna engaged board members. She memorized cover stories and escape routes until her head ached. Evening settled over the city. Security retreated to monitoring stations, leaving them alone in the main living space. Benedict held out a small box, a necessary precaution. Inside lay an elegant ring, rose gold with a subtle black stone. The stone contains a panic button linked to our security system, he explained. It also monitors my heartbeat. You'll know instantly if something happens to either of us. Kenna slipped it onto her right hand, testing the weight. The band felt warm, like a promise. I should be more scared, she admitted. The gala, Salvatore's people, all of it. But that's not what terrifies me most. Benedict went still, waiting. I'm afraid of wanting you. The words fell like stones into still water. Of trusting this. You've been so careful with boundaries, with choices. But I keep thinking about your hands in the gym, showing me breaks and holds, about you cooking terrible salmon just to make me laugh. Kenna, her name sounded like prayer on his lips. I know you're trying to protect me, but I need to know. Am I just a responsibility, a debt you're repaying because of your mother's history with the ring? He moved closer, telegraphing each step until mere inches separated them. You are not a debt or a duty. You are... He struggled visibly with words. Everything I do is to ensure you never doubt your worth here. Your choices matter, your consent matters. I've never had to ask for basic respect from you. And you never will. His voice roughened. Not here, not with me. The city lights painted shadows across his features, highlighting the scar at his hairline, a reminder of other promises kept. Kenna felt the weight of the panic ring, the warmth of his nearness, the strange safety of this dangerous man who treated her boundaries like law. Tomorrow would bring the gala's risks, Salvatore's schemes, Hope Harbor's masks. But tonight, in this moment, Kenna stood in the presence of carefully banked fire and felt, finally, truly warm. The boutique's private salon gleamed with morning light, all cream walls and gilt-edged mirrors. Kenna ran her fingers over fabric samples while the stylist Marina took measurements with practiced efficiency. The emerald, Kenna decided, pointing to a silk gown with architectural seaming. Structure matters more than sparkle. Marina nodded approvingly. Good eye. The bodice has internal boning. Nothing shifts without permission. She lowered her voice. Mr. Hale insisted on reinforced seams and hidden pockets. Benedict's voice carried through the fitting room door as Marina helped Kenna into the gown. The shoes should be practical, no stilettos. I know how to run in heels, Kenna called back. But I agree, 2 inches, maximum. The emerald silk whispered against her skin as Marina secured the hidden zipper. The bodice curved precisely over her breasts, tapering to her waist before flowing into elegant drapes. No cleavage-bearing cutouts or restrictive mermaid hem, just clean lines that made strength look effortless. You look like yourself, Benedict said when she emerged. Not their version. The real story. The point, not the prelude. Kenna smoothed the silk over her hips. Exactly. His eyes tracked the movement before snapping back to her face. You're not window dressing. You're the sword. They returned to the tower by early afternoon. Benedict headed to his study while Kenna reviewed the gala's seating chart with security. The glass walls offered a clear view when Jonah Pike strode in, tablet in hand and concern etched on his features. The board called an emergency session, Jonah announced without preamble. They're preparing a suspension vote over brand risk unless we implement immediate damage control. Benedict's shoulders stiffened. Define damage control. Sale of volatile divisions. Public statement distancing Hale Holdings from... Jonah glanced through the glass at Kenna. Recent distractions. No. Ben, be reasonable. The stock. Submit all internal communications to forensics. Focus on data leaks, especially around the auction footage. Benedict's voice could have etched steel. That will be all. Jonah lingered, gripping his tablet. The board won't back down. Think about your father's legacy. My father's legacy includes protecting people from predators. Benedict opened his laptop, a clear dismissal. Closed the door. Kenna spent the afternoon in the private gym, practicing with the panic ring while memorizing blueprints. 3 quick taps for immediate extraction, 2 slow taps for surveillance, 1 long press to trigger full security protocols. The stone felt warm against her skin, synced to Benedict's heartbeat. The main entrance has 2 choke points, she recited, studying the museum's floor plan. Service corridor leads to the loading dock, emergency stairs in the north wing. Good, Benedict handed her water. But don't forget, visible targets are harder to disappear. Stay in sightlines. Evening settled over the city as they migrated to the kitchen. Benedict pulled out pasta ingredients while Kenna chopped garlic and basil. At least it's not salmon, she teased, bumping his shoulder as he reached for olive oil. That fish was perfectly adequate. It was cremated, with honors. He smiled, the expression softening his whole face. Next time I'll stick to pasta. They ate at the kitchen island, trading bites of linguine while refining their cover story. Anonymous donors establishing a fund for elder care workers, close enough to truth to read authentic. The charity angle gives us reason to discuss their books, Kenna noted. Plus my background makes the interest natural. Benedict nodded. Keep conversation focused on their public programs. Any hint we're investigating deeper will trigger alerts. What about Salvatore's people? They'll be watching. Let them watch. His hand covered hers briefly. We're not hiding. We're rewriting the narrative. They worked past midnight, mapping contingencies as the city glittered beyond the windows. Kenna set her phone alarm for the next evening while Benedict's security team conducted final equipment checks. Ready? He asked as the clock ticked over. Kenna touched the panic ring, feeling its subtle warmth. Ready. We show them what real protection looks like. She caught his slight smile as he turned away. Tomorrow would transform everything, but tonight they had pasta, plans, and the quiet certainty of standing together. The gala's risks felt distant compared to the strength they'd built in these private moments, cooking disasters and combat lessons, laughter and trust growing like vines through the cracks of their careful walls. Benedict gathered the dinner dishes while Kenna reviewed the guest list one final time. Their preparation felt both meticulous and insufficient, like trying to plot the path of a storm. But as she watched him move through the familiar space of their shared sanctuary, she knew they'd already weathered harder winds than Hope Harbor could summon. The panic ring pulsed gently with his heartbeat, steady as a lighthouse beam. Whatever traps awaited at the gala, they'd face them as they'd faced everything else. Together, clear-eyed, and absolutely refusing to break. The Hope Harbor Museum's ballroom shimmered like a jewel box filled with razor blades. Crystal chandeliers caught and multiplied the flash of designer jewelry, while conversations hummed with the precise pitch of well-practiced lies. Kenna smoothed her emerald gown, grateful for its armor of structured seams. Benedict's hand rested lightly at the small of her back as they descended the grand staircase, a united front against the rising whispers. Lot 12, someone hissed, not quite under their breath. With Benedict Hale himself, another voice added. Camera phones lifted like a wave. Kenna kept her chin level, remembering the interview. She was the point, not the prelude. The story, not the shame. Darling, the voice dripped honey and arsenic. Katerina Dragunova clicked across the marble in silver stilettos, her red dress a slash of warning. "That strap is just threatening to slip. Let me help." Before Kenna could step back, Katerina's manicured fingers were at her shoulder, probing for weakness. But the bodice's interior stays held firm, denying her the satisfaction of an accidental wardrobe malfunction. "How thoughtful," Kenna said, voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "But everything's exactly where it should be." Katerina's smile tightened. "Of course, we all want you to look appropriate." "More than appropriate," Benedict cut in smoothly. "Stunning, actually." His tone left no room for debate. They moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting flutes of champagne they wouldn't drink. Kenna recognized faces from the auction footage, not bidders, but the staff who'd facilitated. The woman who'd checked IDs now worked the coat check. The man who'd handled merchandise transport was collecting donor cards. "Dance with me," Benedict murmured as the orchestra began a waltz. "We need better sight lines." Kenna nodded, letting him guide her to the floor. They'd practiced this, timing their steps to map the room's blind spots. His hand settled properly at her waist, maintaining space between them, even as other couples pressed closer. "Security confirms 3 known ring associates in service positions," he said quietly, turning her away from watching eyes. "They're tracking movements, but no direct." Someone brushed past, bumping Kenna's shoulder. A murmured "sorry" floated by, gone before she could identify the source. Benedict's jaw tightened. He tapped his earpiece twice, signaling for a sweep. They completed the dance, then drifted to a quieter corner near an ice sculpture, slowly weeping onto its silver tray. "Ma'am." One of their security team appeared, voice low. "We found this on your dress." In his palm lay a micro camera pin, no larger than a pearl. It would have captured everything: conversations, faces, security positions. "Clever," Benedict said, but his eyes had gone cold. "Have it analyzed, full spectrum." Kenna fought a shiver. "They're not just watching, they're gathering ammunition." "Let them try." His hand brushed hers, a ghost of contact. "We expected this." The charity's director took the stage, tapping a crystal glass for attention. Katerina stood nearby, phone in hand, her red dress like a wound against the white backdrop. As the speech began, platitudes about generosity and vision, Benedict's secure phone vibrated. One message, 3 words, that changed everything. "We took your witness." A location pinged below, a warehouse complex by the river, one of the ring's known safe houses. Benedict's witness, the only person who could testify to Salvatore Russo's direct involvement with the auctions. They moved immediately, no signals needed. Years of planning collapsed into minutes as they made their way to the exit, pace unhurried despite the urgency drumming in their blood. "Our witness is compromised," Benedict told his security lead through the earpiece. "Prepare for extraction at Point Echo. Full tactical." The garage felt colder than the ballroom, their footsteps echoing off concrete. They switched to an unmarked SUV, no trace back to Hale Holdings. Kenna's panic ring pulsed steadily against her finger, synced to Benedict's heartbeat as he drove. City lights blurred past the windows. Kenna counted breaths, trying to slow her racing thoughts. The ballroom's waltz still played in her head, a mocking counterpoint to their speed through empty streets. "They planned this," she said finally. "Used the gala as cover while they grabbed her." "Yes," Benedict's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "But they also showed their hand. That safe house was supposed to stay dark." They reached the rendezvous point in 13 minutes. Security teams melted out of shadows, tactical gear replacing evening wear. The river lapped quietly against concrete pylons, indifferent to the drama unfolding on its banks. Kenna stood beside Benedict as his team laid out the approach. The warehouse loomed ahead, windows dark except for one faint light 3 stories up. Somewhere inside, a witness waited, if they weren't already too late. The ballroom's music echoed in her memory, elegant notes twisted into something sinister, like the gala itself, beauty masking teeth. But this time they weren't just watching the show. They were about to change the ending. Benedict checked his weapon with precise movements. "Stay close. If anything feels wrong." "I tapped the ring," Kenna finished. 3 times fast, I remember." His eyes met hers, and for a moment the mask slipped. Fear lived there, not for himself, but for her, for their witness, for everyone the ring had ever touched with its poison. The security lead signaled. "Teams in position." Benedict nodded once, decision made. Around them, the night held its breath, waiting to see which way the balance would tip. 15 minutes after leaving the gala's glittering facade, they stood ready to breach the warehouse's shadows. The river's dark water reflected distant city lights, a reminder of the world that spun on, unknowing, while they prepared to strike at the heart of something rotted and wrong. The warehouse door's rusty hinges matched the photo from the blackmail files exactly. The flaking red paint and warped metal frame were unmistakable in the dim light. Kenna touched Benedict's arm, her fingers pressing gently against the fine wool of his tactical jacket, pointing to the loose panel they'd documented. He nodded, the slight movement barely perceptible, signaling the team to adjust their entry point with a series of practiced hand gestures. "Third stair squeaks," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "Bathroom window sticks halfway. Layout curves left after the storage space. There's a blind corner where they post a guard during shift changes." Benedict moved first, each step precise and measured, weight distributed to minimize sound on the concrete floor. The security team flowed behind like smoke, weapons ready but silent, their dark clothing melting into the shadows. Kenna stayed close to the wall, her back pressed against the cold surface, counting her breaths the way they'd practiced during those tense preparation sessions in Benedict's underground facility. 1-2 hold, 1-2 release. The rhythm steadied her racing heart. Moonlight filtered through grimy windows, dust particles dancing in the silver beams, painting strange, elongated shadows across the floor. A guard's footsteps echoed above, the hollow thud of boots on metal catwalk. Regular patrol pattern, just like the files showed. They waited, frozen in place, letting him pass before advancing toward the stairwell. The third stair groaned under pressure, a wooden protest that seemed deafening in the silence. Everyone froze, muscles tense, breathing suspended. But the guard's pace didn't change, his footfalls continuing their monotonous rhythm, and they continued upward, following Kenna's memorized path through the maze of corridors lined with abandoned equipment and mysterious crates. A muffled thump came from ahead, followed by a soft, pained sound that made Kenna's stomach clench. Benedict accelerated, his shoulders tight with controlled violence, jaw locked, and eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. They found the witness room quickly. Kenna recognized the peculiar L-shaped doorframe with its chipped green paint and missing corner. Inside, a guard with a scarred face had a gun pressed to the witness's temple. She knelt on the floor, zip-tied but conscious, blood trickling from her split lip, eyes wide with terror, but still defiant. "Back off, or—" The guard never finished his threat. Benedict moved like contained lightning, a blur of precise violence. One moment he was beside Kenna, the next he had the guard's gun hand twisted backward at an impossible angle. Bone cracked with a sickening sound. The weapon clattered away across the concrete floor as the man dropped, gasping and clutching his shattered wrist. "Secure him!" Benedict ordered, voice winter-cold and razor-sharp. 2 team members zip-tied the guard while others swept adjacent rooms with practiced efficiency, checking closets and under furniture. Kenna helped the witness stand while Benedict cut her bonds with a matte black knife that appeared from nowhere. "I'm Alice," the woman whispered, her voice raspy from dehydration. "They said no one would—" She swallowed hard, trembling. "You're safe now," Kenna assured her, noting the bruises with clinical detachment that surprised her. Purple marks on wrists, a swollen cheekbone, finger-shaped discolorations on her throat. "Can you walk?" Alice nodded, swaying slightly on unsteady legs. "The safe room. They wanted the drive. I wouldn't give them the code. They tried. Everything." The last word hung heavy with unspoken horrors. Benedict's security lead, a former Special Forces operative named Reyes, retrieved the drive from behind a false wall panel, his fingers deftly manipulating a hidden catch. "Clear to move," he reported, voice low and calm. "But we've got movement in the East Wing. 3 heat signatures." They started their exit, Alice supported between Kenna and a female security officer with close cropped hair and gentle hands. Benedict took point, weapon drawn but low, each corner approached with lethal grace, his body coiled and ready. The sound of rapid typing, frantic keyboard clicks, drew them to a side office with a partially open door. Through the gap, Kenna saw Jonah Pike hunched over a laptop, his expensive suit jacket draped over a chair, frantically copying files to an external drive. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the cool air. Benedict entered silently, gun steady, and aimed center mass. "Step away from the computer, Jonah!" Pike startled, hand jerking toward his jacket pocket. Benedict's warning shot splintered the desk an inch from Pike's fingers, wood fragments exploding upward. The sound echoed through the room, impossibly loud. "I said, step away." Each word dripped with deadly promise. "Benedict, listen." Pike raised his hands slowly, his trademark confidence faltering. I'm isolating potential exposure, protecting the company's interests. By accessing restricted servers hours before the gala? Benedict's voice could have frozen flame, arctic in its intensity. The timestamps don't lie, Jonah. Neither do the access logs, or the money trail to Russo. Kenna watched Pike's face shift through emotions like flipping channels, shock, calculation, then a hasty reconstruction of his corporate mask. The board required due diligence. The board doesn't have clearance for those files. Benedict nodded to his team, the gesture sharp and precise. Secure the SSD, all devices. We'll let forensics tell us exactly what kind of due diligence you were performing and who you were performing it for. They zip-tied Pike, despite his increasingly desperate protests about excessive force and shareholder rights and professional courtesy. Kenna noted how his expensive suit had gathered dust in strange places, knees, elbows, back. He'd been here longer than just tonight, crawling through spaces not meant for his tailored presence. Distant sirens pierced the night, growing louder with each passing second. Anonymous tip, the security lead reported, checking his encrypted phone, frowning at the screen. Not from us. Someone else knows we're here. Move out, Benedict ordered, scanning exits on his mental map. Alternative exit route. Avoid all main approaches. They hustled through maintenance corridors and narrow passages, ducking under pipes and stepping over abandoned tools. Alice stumbled, but remained determined, her jaw set against pain. Kenna kept one hand near her panic ring, thumb hovering over the hidden button, though she never needed to trigger it. The river's damp breath met them as they emerged into pre-dawn darkness, the water's surface rippling with city lights. 3 unmarked vehicles waited in a loading zone, engines running, drivers alert. They split up, Alice with medical support in a modified SUV, Pike with heavy security in an armored sedan, and Kenna with Benedict in the lead car, a sleek black vehicle with bulletproof glass. As they pulled away, police lights painted the warehouse in strobing blue and red, officers swarming the main entrance they'd deliberately avoided. The city slept on, oblivious to the night's drama, streetlights creating pools of yellow between stretches of darkness. Kenna watched buildings blur past, her emerald gown now stained with warehouse dust and smudged with someone else's blood. The adrenaline crash left her hands shaking slightly, the reality of the night settling into her bones. Benedict drove with contained fury, knuckles white on the steering wheel, one hand occasionally brushing hers as if reassuring himself she was there, real and unharmed. They reached the tower just as false dawn began painting the sky with hesitant strokes of lavender and gold. Security whisked Alice to a secured guest suite for medical attention, a doctor already waiting. Pike went to a very different kind of room for questioning, windowless and monitored. The SSD and other devices disappeared into forensics, carried by technicians with grim expressions. In the penthouse, Benedict immediately began coordinating with his team, pacing the living room while issuing rapid-fire instructions. Full board meeting records, every email Pike sent in the last 6 months, financial transactions, personal and corporate. I want everything ready before they try to blindside us at the morning briefing. Kenna sat at the kitchen island, still in her ruined ball gown, watching him work with single-minded intensity. The elegant hairstyle had partially collapsed, releasing curls around her face that caught the warm kitchen light. She felt the weight of the night in every muscle, exhaustion settling deep into her body. Do we ever get a morning that's just morning? She whispered, the question escaping before she could stop it. Benedict paused mid-instruction, his eyes softening as they met hers across the room, the ice momentarily thawing. The question hung between them, simple, human, and heartbreakingly honest after so much complexity and shadow. For a moment, neither of them were players in a dangerous game, just 2 people longing for ordinary things in an extraordinary world. Morning light filtered through the tower's glass walls as Benedict straightened his tie. The boardroom waited 30 floors below, its mahogany table already surrounded by vultures in designer suits. Let me come with you, Kenna said, watching him from the kitchen doorway. He shook his head. They'll use anything they can against us. Stay here where it's secure. The elevator descended like a countdown. Benedict's security team flanked him as he strode into the boardroom, carrying a single leather briefcase containing the SSD and forensics report. Gentlemen, ladies? His voice cut through the murmured conversations. I believe we should begin with a closed audit of... Actually, Jonah Pike interrupted smoothly from his seat near the chairman. "We have more pressing concerns." He gestured to the massive screen behind him. The footage started playing, high-angle shots from the gala, focused on Kenna, close-ups of her speaking to various guests, timestamps carefully visible, brief glimpses of her near-service corridors edited to look suspicious. "The pin camera recovered from Ms. Brooks' gown," Pike explained. "Rather convenient positioning, wouldn't you say? And shortly after these moments, our witness was compromised." Benedict's hands tightened on the briefcase. "That camera was planted on her without consent. We have proof. We have proof that your companion has repeatedly accessed sensitive areas," Pike continued. "That her presence coincides with multiple security breaches. That her very public crusade has cost us millions in market value." The chairman cleared his throat. "Benedict, the board has concerns about your judgment. This situation with Ms. Brooks has nothing to do with company operations," Benedict cut in. "If you'll examine the contents of this drive." "We've seen enough." Pike's smile was razor-thin. "I move for an immediate vote on temporary leadership restructuring." The motion passed with brutal efficiency. Benedict watched faces he'd known for years avoid his gaze as they raised their hands. Only 2 directors abstained. "Effective immediately," the chairman read. "Benedict Hale is suspended from his position as CEO pending investigation. His personal accounts will be restricted to a living allowance. Corporate security will escort the distraction from the premises." "Touch her," Benedict's voice dropped to Arctic levels. "And I'll bury this company in harassment suits before lunch." Several directors shifted uncomfortably. The chairman coughed. "Perhaps we could modify the removal clause." "What you could do," Benedict said, "is examine the evidence of who actually compromised company security." He placed the SSD on the table. "But we both know that's not why we're here." Pike slid forward a thick document. "To prevent further market instability, we've prepared a divestiture agreement. Key volatile divisions would be placed in a neutral trust pending external review. It would calm shareholder concerns." Benedict read the terms with clinical detachment. The volatile divisions represented nearly 40% of his personal holdings, the crown jewels of his empire. But they were also the units most vulnerable to market panic, the ones whose collapse would devastate employee pensions and family savings. "I'll sign," he said finally, "on one condition. Ms. Brooks remains under my personal protection, free from any corporate interference." "Agreed," the chairman said quickly, relief evident, "though we must insist the arrangement remain private." Benedict signed without flourish. The pen felt like a blade in his hand. The elevator ride back up was silent. His security team, still loyal despite the board's orders, maintained a protective formation. The penthouse doors opened to reveal Kenna pacing near the windows. She read his face instantly. "What happened?" He poured 2 fingers of scotch but didn't drink. "They voted to suspend me, restricted my accounts, wanted to have you removed." "Because of the pin camera?" It wasn't a question. "Pike played it perfectly, made you look like an inside threat." The crystal tumbler creaked in his grip. "They demanded I divest controlling shares of key divisions into a trust to stop a market crash that would hurt thousands of innocent people. And you agreed." Kenna's voice was soft. "To protect them. To protect me. I won't fight for a crown that puts you at risk." He finally met her eyes. "The company, the empire, it's just power. You're real." She crossed to him slowly, reached up to touch the scar at his hairline. "What remains of you without it all?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Benedict set down his untouched scotch. "Everything that matters," he said. "Everything I am beyond the mask they needed me to wear." Night had fallen by the time the final papers arrived. Benedict sat at his dining table, signing away pieces of his empire 1 page at a time. The pen scratched like a dull knife, each signature tasting of copper and regret. Kenna watched from across the table, her presence both anchor and wound. The last page waited like an execution order. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "Yes, I do." He signed with the same precise strokes he'd used in 1,000 deals. Then he set the pen aside with quiet finality. It was done. The crown was surrendered. The throne abandoned. All to keep her safe, to break the leverage they thought they had. Benedict looked at his hands, still strong, still capable, now freed from golden chains he'd forged himself. Across the table, Kenna's eyes held no pity, only fierce understanding. The night pressed against the windows, but for the first time in decades he felt light. The weight of empire had lifted, leaving behind a man who could choose his own path. He would burn down heaven itself to keep her safe. Letting go of a corporate throne was nothing in comparison. Dawn painted the skyline in watercolor grays as Benedict adjusted his tie before the cameras. The press conference room hummed with anticipation, journalists from every major network jockeying for position. Last week, he began, his voice carrying the weight of calculated choice. An industry that trades in human lives branded a woman useless because she didn't fit their ideal victim profile. They thought her size made her worthless. He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. Camera shutters clicked like mechanical insects. In the front row, Kenna sat straight-backed in a cream blazer, her presence both challenge and testimony. I've signed over controlling shares of multiple divisions into a survivor trust, Benedict continued. My empire was built to protect. I won't let it become a weapon against those who need shelter. Questions erupted like startled birds. Benedict raised a hand, commanding silence with the same authority he'd once used in boardrooms. The trust will fund a foundation dedicated to providing safe housing, legal assistance, and job placement for survivors. Ms. Brooks will serve as chair, bringing her expertise in care logistics and system navigation to those who need it most. Kenna rose to join him at the podium, her heels clicking purposefully across the stage. The cameras swung to capture her, not as a victim, but as a force. We're not asking for pity, she said clearly. We're building solutions. Every person deserves dignity, safety, and the chance to reclaim their story. Back in the penthouse's command center by mid-morning, security analysts tracked the fallout. Stock tickers scrolled. Social media exploded, and encrypted channels buzzed with underworld chatter. They're furious, the lead analyst reported, gesturing to intercepts from known trafficking networks. Without corporate compliance restrictions, Mr. Hale's more dangerous to them now. Benedict studied the feeds with cold focus. They thought taking my crown would weaken me. They forgot what I was before I wore it. At 11:47 a.m., a priority alert flashed. The team decoded an encrypted message from Salvatore Russo's inner circle. Clean the mess! No witnesses! Priority on the woman! Kenna read the kill order over Benedict's shoulder, her fingers brushing his arm. He thinks you're vulnerable now. He's about to learn otherwise. Benedict's jaw tightened. We need to move you to a secure location. No. Kenna's voice was firm. I can help take them down. Elder care taught me to see what others miss. Delivery patterns, quiet spaces, the routes people use when they think no one's watching. It's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous, she cut in. But I know how to track supply lines, predict transport schedules. The same skills that kept my residents safe can help us find their victims. Benedict studied her face, seeing not fear but fierce determination. You're not running. I'm done running. She squeezed his hand. Let me help end this. They spent the afternoon reviewing the files recovered from the warehouse. Kenna's trained eye for patterns revealed connections others had missed. Shell companies matching legitimate care home suppliers. Transport routes disguised as medical transfers. Here, she pointed to an address in the old leverage files. The Orpheum Opera House. It's been abandoned for decades, but utility records show regular power usage. And look at the loading dock layout. Perfect for moving people unseen. Rain started falling as evening approached, purling against the penthouse windows. Half-packed boxes lined the walls, the space already transitioning to its new purpose as Foundation headquarters. Benedict's security team prepped gear while Kenna studied blueprints of the opera house. Her fingers traced escape routes with the same care she'd once used to map emergency exits for her elderly charges. The basement level has private boxes that connected to old smuggling tunnels, she noted. During Prohibition, they moved liquor. Now they move people. Benedict checked his tactical vest. We'll hit them where it started, end it where it began. Thunder rolled outside as midnight approached. The rain fell harder, like nature herself was trying to wash the city clean. In the garage, the team loaded the last of the gear into matte black SUVs. Kenna zipped up her Kevlar-lined jacket, a panic ring secure on her finger. Above, the penthouse stood half empty, its transformation from fortress to sanctuary already underway. Like them, it was becoming something new, something stronger than before. Benedict touched her shoulder, his eyes questioning. She nodded once, certain. They'd both shed old skins, his crown, her fear. What remained was steel, tempered by choice and trust. The garage door opened to sheets of rain. Lightning split the sky, illuminating their convoy for a breath, before darkness swallowed them again. The opera house waited across the city, a temple built on broken dreams where they would write an ending in truth and justice. They pulled out into the storm, wipers beating a steady rhythm against the downpour. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said in choices made and bridges burned. The rain sang against the roof like a requiem for empires fallen and chains broken. But under that song was a deeper music, the sound of purpose, of protection transformed into something holy and fierce. Through the streaked windows, the city lights blurred like stars falling. They drove into the heart of that storm, carrying with them the weight of change and the promise of dawn. Moonlight filtered through the opera house's cracked dome, casting shadows across faded velvet and gilded decay. Benedict's team moved like ghosts through the catwalks, positioning themselves in the shadowed balconies while their burned alias whispered through criminal channels about one final sale. Kenna adjusted her earpiece, hidden behind a weathered column. The rescued witness, now wired and cooperative, waited in the wings. Her panic ring felt cool against her skin, ready to signal security at a moment's notice. "Movement at the stage door," crackled through their comms. Salvatore Russo swept in like a king entering his court, flanked by two hulking enforcers. Katerina Dragunova followed, carrying a sleek attaché case, her heels clicking against worn marble. The sound echoed through the vast space like breaking glass. "Quite the venue for a finale," Russo's voice carried across the empty seats. "Though I prefer newer establishments, less history in the walls." Benedict emerged from the shadows, every movement calculated. "Some histories deserve remembering." Katerina's perfectly manicured hand tightened on her case. "And some should stay buried, darling." The witness stepped forward on cue, and Russo's eyes narrowed. "You survived. Impressive." Along with everything he knew, Benedict's voice carried an edge sharp enough to draw blood. The first shot came from one of Russo's men, splintering wood near Benedict's head. The opera house erupted into chaos. Benedict moved like lightning, disarming the first enforcer with brutal efficiency. The crack of bone echoed off ornate walls. Kenna pressed against her column, heart thundering as she tracked positions through the panic ring's interface. 3 quick taps, eastern balcony clear, 2 long, western approach secured. "Second level! Stage left!" she transmitted as one of Russo's men tried flanking their position. Katerina seized the chaos, bolting toward the backstage area with her case. Kenna spotted her weaving through old set pieces and made a split-second decision. She sprinted after the socialite, remembering the layout from their earlier review. Their chase led through a maze of forgotten props and rotting curtains. Katerina was fast in her designer heels, but Kenna had studied every corner of this place. She cut through a shorter route and emerged just as Katerina passed. The collision sent them both sprawling. The case skidded across the floor, popping open to reveal stacks of ledgers, names, dates, prices paid for human lives. Katerina scrambled for the papers, but Kenna was faster. She drove her shoulder into the other woman, forcing her backward into an ancient costume cage. The metal door clanged shut. Kenna snatched a nearby stage hook and threaded it through the bars, securing it with hands that didn't shake. "How does it feel to be the one in the cage?" Distant sirens grew louder, right on schedule. Their lawyers had timed the anonymous tips perfectly, backed by damning evidence from both the ledgers and the SSD that exposed Jonah's betrayal. A scream ripped through the air. Kenna spun to see Russo dragging a knife across her path, his face twisted with rage. "Come here, girl, time to finish what we started." She backed away, but he was faster. His arm locked around her throat, blade pressing against her skin. "Drop it," he snarled at Benedict, who had appeared with his weapon raised. "Or I paint the stage with her blood." Benedict's eyes met Kenna's. In that moment, something passed between them, trust, absolute and unshaken. He slowly lowered his gun, placing it on the ground. "That's right," Russo sneered. "Finally learning your place." Kenna drove her head back, connecting with Russo's nose. The knife sliced air instead of flesh as she twisted away. Benedict surged forward, a force of nature contained in human form. His first strike knocked the blade away, the second put Russo on his knees, the third ensured he wouldn't rise again until police hauled him up. Red and blue lights strobed through the broken dome as tactical units flooded the aisles. Officers secured Russo, who moaned beneath their weight. From her cage, Katerina's screams bounced off gilded walls, a soprano's aria of rage and defeat. Evidence teams collected scattered ledgers while federal agents photographed the scene. The witness gave his statement, voice steady now, pointing out key players in the ring's operation. Kenna stood in the center of it all, breathing in the dust and decay and victory. Benedict's hand found hers, warm and solid, his thumb brushing over the panic ring he'd given her. Above them, moonlight spilled through the shattered dome like silver rain, turning the chaos below into something almost beautiful. The old opera house groaned around them, as if releasing decades of dark secrets into the night. Officers led Russo past them in cuffs, his earlier swagger replaced by defeated shuffling. Katerina's protests had devolved into quiet, sobs from her makeshift cell. More sirens joined the chorus outside as additional units arrived. The Foundation's lawyers stood in the lobby, efficiently directing evidence handling and ensuring every procedure was followed to the letter. Their careful preparation would leave no loopholes for escape. Benedict's security team emerged from their positions, reporting all clear through each section of the building. The witnesses' recorded conversations would provide the final nails in multiple coffins. Even now, other raids were being launched across the city, targeting locations identified through the recovered ledgers. Through the grand entrance, dawn's first light began creeping across the marble floor. It caught the gilt edges of broken mirrors and dusty chandeliers, making them glitter like stars falling through time. The opera house seemed to exhale, its dark purpose finally exposed to cleansing light. Dawn painted the penthouse windows in soft gold as moving boxes lined the halls. The space buzzed with purposeful energy, transforming from a private sanctuary into Hope's headquarters. Blueprints covered the dining table, where Benedict had signed away his empire just days ago, now marked with plans for counseling offices and survivor housing. In the living room, a young woman, with hands that trembled less than yesterday, signed papers for her new apartment. Her caseworker, personally vetted by Benedict, sat beside her, explaining each document with patient care. More survivors waited in the refurbished conference room, some alone, others supporting friends who'd been too scared to come forward until now. Benedict stood at his usual window, watching the city wake. His hands shook slightly, aftershocks from the violence at the opera house still working through his system. Kenna approached quietly, covering his trembling fingers with her own. "I thought walking away would feel like losing something," he admitted, voice low. "But it didn't hollow me out. It made room." She squeezed his hands, understanding the weight of that confession. Room for what? For this? For helping people without worrying about stock prices or board votes? For building something that matters? He turned to face her. For you. The morning light caught the tears in her eyes, but her smile was steady. You never needed an empire to be extraordinary. I needed you to see that. His thumb traced her cheek. Everyone called you useless, but you were the reason I could finally choose protection over power, choose a real life instead of just surviving. Kenna pressed her forehead to his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. I want that life with you. All of it. The ordinary mornings and extraordinary nights. Forever. Forever, he agreed, the word both prayer and promise. They married that afternoon in the tower's rooftop garden. Spring flowers nodded in the breeze as a judge performed the ceremony. Grant stood as witness, pride visible beneath his professional mask. The rescued witness, his bruises fading to yellow, beamed from his chair. Even the usually stoic security team smiled. Kenna wore a simple cream dress that made her feel beautiful without apology. Benedict couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him between potted olive trees and climbing roses. The panic ring went into a velvet box, replaced by a platinum band. On the inside, 3 words were engraved. Mine. Always. While they exchanged vows, alerts buzzed through the security system. Jonah Pike had been arrested at the airport, the SSD's audit trail providing irrefutable evidence of his collusion with Russo. Across town, Katerina Dragunova accepted a plea deal, trading her client ledgers for a reduced sentence. The morning news confirmed Russo had been denied bail, his empire crumbling as former victims came forward. But those details felt distant now, background noise, to the quiet perfection of this moment. Benedict's hands were steady as he slipped the ring onto her finger. When the judge pronounced them married, his kiss tasted like triumph and tenderness and tomorrow. That evening, they danced barefoot in the kitchen. Takeout containers replaced Benedict's infamous salmon attempts, and their laughter echoed off the windows. The city sparkled beyond the glass, no longer a fortress keeping danger out, but a future stretching endlessly before them. I love you, Kenna whispered against his chest as they swayed. Not because you saved me, but because you saw me, really saw me. I love you, he murmured back. Not because you changed me, but because you showed me who I already was beneath the armor. Foundation staff had left for the day, leaving scattered paperwork and half-unpacked boxes as evidence of their purpose. Tomorrow would bring more survivors seeking help, more lives to rebuild. But tonight belonged to them. They danced until the sky turned purple with dusk, wedding bands catching the last light. No empire had ever felt as valuable as this. This choice, this love, this continuous present where every day mattered and no moment was lost. Benedict spun her gently, her cream dress swirling. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Hale?" "Feels like coming home," she answered. "Like everything that led us here was worth it." A delivery person arrived with fresh coffee for the morning staff, nodding respectfully as she set up the station. Life flowing onward, ordinary and extraordinary intertwined. The Foundation's logo, a lighthouse beam piercing darkness, had already been installed in the lobby downstairs. They kept dancing as night settled over the city, bare feet silent on cool tiles. No more auctions, no more cages, no more measuring worth in dollars or dimensions. Just this, a man and woman who'd chosen each other continuously without a single day unaccounted for. The kitchen timer chimed, reminding them of a late dinner warming in the oven. But they stayed wrapped in their dance for one more song, then another. Through the windows, stars emerged like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Their reflection showed two people holding each other close, wedding bands glinting, shadows finally at rest.